Again with these EP requests. I have 2 EP requests this time around. I mean, to be fair, that last one we reviewed really paid off, but the problem with reviewing most EPs is that, well, they're just too short to really say too much about. An album that's only 15 minutes long, unless it just happens to be really good, often doesn't leave much of an impression on you, you know? And for guys like me who have to write reviews on this stuff, it often leaves us scrambling for stuff to say. Oftentimes we have to submit to using stalling tactics like describing past albums we reviewed, rambling about stuff that isn't terribly pertinent to the album itself, or going on about the review writing process in a vain attempt to detract attention away from not having much to say. But okay, cons. I get why their recent EP, Slowhealer, was requested here, primarily because these guys literally have nothing else. This is their full-blown debut, their first step up to the plate, and given that these guys are a small, kinda local hardcore group from Tucson, they've been able to score a few big notices for themselves, namely opening gigs for both Rest, Repose, and Of Mice and Men, which is pretty cool for a bunch of guys that are just getting their start, basically. Given what I heard on their EP, yeah, I'd say those are good bands to pair them with. In fact, I found myself rather liking their sound a lot better than either of those 2 acts, frankly. If anything, because it wasn't quite as boring as those guys. This is a post-hardcore thrashabout that has just the right tinges of melody and discord to keep you interested and take you in directions you may not have expected the music to immediately go. It's chaotic and intense, but with just the right amount of clean variations on vocals and guitar work to make for an intriguing listen. Think Under Oath if they weren't nearly as emo-y. You know what I mean? Overall, I kinda dug what I heard here. I wasn't head over heels for it though. I'll sum up my general thoughts on these guys with a line from the late great Tom Petty. I don't hear a single. It's very well played, and you can tell these guys definitely have potential. There wasn't anything in here that particularly throttled me, grabbed my attention and demanded it to be heard. Again though, we're dealing with a debut EP from a brand spanking new group. While this isn't their finest hour, how often is that the case for a band's very first effort? I mean, apart from all those, look, to borrow from Petty again, while I may not hear a single here, this band's future is wide open. The potential is definitely there. I don't think it's been tapped into just yet though, but these guys still have plenty of time, and if you like what you hear, this may be a train worth jumping onto early. Good stuff, just not great. Yet. Slowhealer gets 3.5 potentials out of 5. Authority Zero are still around. Oh, that's neat. I have fond memories of this band back from high school. They used to play One More Minute all the time on our local rock station, rest in peace X103, and it became a running joke against me and all my high school friends. Hey Eric, are you ready to go? Hang on guys, I'm gonna need 1 more minute! I wish I had more of a connection to this band though. I can't say they're a band I really stuck with apart from high school. The thing is, this band was pretty good from what I remember, but they were also one of those punk bands that fused a lot of ska into their sound and, hence the 1 more minute stuff. And even though Authority Zero is one of those bands that does do it well, they came around at a time where I was really starting to burn out on all that ska shit. Real Big Fish was puttering out, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones had long run out of steam, and even 311 were belching out that amber is the color of your energy horse shit. 311 sucks. 311 sucks big time. They make Sugar Ray look like the Dead Kennedys. Fight me. And yeah, these guys had come around at a time where I was just not feeling the reggae vibes, And like a fool, I ended up losing track of them. Though this was also the point in my life where I pretty much went full nu metal, so yeah, I was making lots of foolish decisions at that time. And AZ is one of those bands I've always, meant to catch up with, but I've just never quite gotten around to it, I'm glad this was requested. It finally gives me the excuse. And judging by what I heard on Broadcasting to the Nations, What in the deep-fried hell was wrong with me? I totally should have stayed in touch with these guys. Man, they have upped their punkish energy on this album, or at least from my limited perspective, they certainly have. This record just flies off the hinges with First One in the Pit, Reconciliation, and Destiny and Demise, and keeps the intensity high even when they transition into the more ska or reggae-flavored stuff, like Summer Sickness. And unlike a lot of their kin from back in the day, these guys never go too chill or sublime the fuck out and get all derpy and shit. They keep the music pretty bouncy and intense all across the running time. The lyrics are usually either nice and protesty, like Revolution Riot, or chill and fun with something like La Diabla, but never too goofy, you know? I know you have fond memories of Sublime, but listen to some of that shit today. It's... These guys have a fun sound that scratches just the right itch for both the Mohawk set and the checkerboard crowd, and I really dug it. This sounds way better than all the stuff I heard from back in the day. You know, one more minute is only so charming for so goddamn long, and not only have they appeared to have kept a pretty decent track record for themselves across 15 years, but they've done so with one of those Spinal Tappy kind of lineups, you know? That's impressive, that really is. But the question I always ask myself when checking in with a band I haven't heard from in a long time is, does listening to this album make me want to go back and see what I've missed? And the answer here is a pretty solid hell yeah. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be everyone's cup of tea. I mean, the reggae, ska stuff still does sound like it's ripped right out of the 90s. It's a smooch dated. But, hell, 90s nostalgia is still a big thing, and this is the good kind of ska rock, you know? This was the quality shit, not the... So if you're feeling up to the task, hell yeah, go for it. In the meantime, I have a back catalog I need to traverse. Broadcasting to the nations gets 4 more minutes! Out of 5 more minutes! Okay, I promise, I'm done. I'll stop doing that, I'm sorry. Man, I am late to the party on this one. Nothing's More latest has been swirling in buzz, and holy god have I gotten a myriad of requests for it, both paid and unpaid. This was another one of those albums I could not stop hearing about. And frankly, I was actually looking forward to getting around to it. Other reviewers were pretty well lit up for this, and given the can do no wrong attitude most people were shouting at me from on high, I figured we would probably be in for a treat. And the whole time I sat there listening to this thing, I kept asking myself over and over and over again, brain, can you do me a solid this one time and just, you know, like this album, please? I just piddled all over Starset, now I'm gonna have to deal with the backlash from not liking this. Can you just pretend you like this one and save us both a headache, pretty please? I'll go back to killing you with that strawberry vodka you like so much. But to my sorrow, I could not convince myself that I was liking this album. Is it as big of a disappointment as Starset was? Hell no. In fact, I'd say you could totally throw this onto the ever-growing pile of bands that actually do Starset better than Starset. To an extent, I really get it. When the album shines, it shines pretty well. The ballad Still in Love is soaring and epic, Don't Stop is nice and funky, Do You Really Want It kicks the door open pretty well, and Fade In, Fade Out does close up shop pretty tidily overall. It's got a few solid bangers on it, and everything is loud, bombast, and generally pretty sweeping. It reminds me of a band like, say, Evans Blue or Adelita's Way, only way more lofty and with much higher musical and lyrical standards set for themselves. So, why am I not particularly hard for this thing then? Well, several reasons. Number one, the wank! Oh, sweet sprained wrists, the amount of wank on this album, it's ridiculous. I've been known to bring the hammer down on wanking instrumental interludes that only serve as a means to connect, introduce, or conclude songs. It's fine in moderation, but this album pulls this shit like they were being paid by the song. 6 fucking tracks of this shit. I added up all the time spent transitioning to establish tone, and you know what that total time came up to? 8.5 minutes! That is literally 2 whole songs worth just of taking the goddamn piss. This album is already close to an hour. You could have either saved us the trouble altogether or just written 2 kick-ass songs to fill the void. This shit is just excessive. Just get to the goddamn song already. Nothing like listening to an album and having to get up every 6 minutes to hit the fucking skip button, am I right? And man, this band, they are just not as smart as they think they are. Yes, really, and no, angry commenter, you can save me your diatribe about, this band, actually writes a lot about philosophy and, psychology, and, I'm sorry you were just not, intelligent enough to catch all that. To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand. Stow it, sailor! I already heard that shit! Hell, when I was doing my preliminary research into this group and saw that they listed people like Alan Watts and Carl Jung and filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick and Terrence Malick as some of their influences, it made me think we would be in for something heady or cerebral or at least trippy. But upon listening to this album, that factoid quickly just became another thing for me to be disappointed in. The high and mighty philosophical topics these guys touch on really don't amount to much more than, well, isn't it funny how, people say one thing, but then, dude, get this, they often do another. Whoa. Or stuff like, hey man, everybody wants to change the world. Yeah, everybody wants to do that, but nobody wants to change themselves. Know what I mean? What's up? Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I saw that shit on a bumper sticker on the way over here. I'm not drunk enough for this to sound deep. Is it the most pretentious thing in the world, though? Hell no. In fact, most of what they're singing about are good things to keep in mind, but they treat them like they're just the most explosive, most deep, most mind-blowing things you could possibly be singing about. Oh my god, dude. Hang on, let me get back to you on that after I finish with these George Harrison, The National, and Radiohead records, okay? I mean, it's an album that's way longer than it needs to be, and it takes itself just a little too seriously, but not at all offensive. Like I said, when this album bangs, it bangs hard. I just wish it, banged more often and cut it out with all the padding and shit. If this sounds like it's your thing, you'll probably get more of a kick out of it than I did, but look, any album that makes me hit the skip button more than 4 times just isn't getting an Aces review, okay? The stories we tell ourselves gets 3.5. Whoa, dude. Out of 5. Like, whoa, dude. Oh my god. Can you even? Just wow. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, I had a funny feeling this one would get Patreon requested. Know why? Cause I love me some girl punk, and this is some girl-ass girl punk. And that's girl spelled with a G-R-R-R-L, because... And yeah, I almost feel like reviewing this band is too much of an easy take coming from a guy like me who's continually shouted his love for stuff like Slater Kinney, Bikini Kill, The Regrets, etc., etc. But yeah, Bad Cop's latest just kicks so much ass. Listening to it alone will probably leave a boot print on your gluteus maximus. It fucking rocks. And make no mistake, this isn't pop punk or emo punk or anything like that. This is punk-ass punk. Her vocalist shrieks and growls like a lady fat Mike. Her voice reminds me a lot of like Wendy O. Williams or Brody Dale. Just someone who clearly can sing, but chooses to just growl like a motherfucker instead because it's awesome, and fuck you, dude. The instrumentation is loud, rapid fire, and distorted as all Christing fuck, and with songs like Womanarchist, Wild Me, and I'm Done, yeah, you step into this thing knowing exactly what you're in for. And man, does it deliver. Get your middle fingers in the air, don your Bratmobile t-shirts, and get in that motherfucking pit, man. Holy shit. And hey, you guys know me by this point. I am a Not My President t-shirt sporting, Planned Parenthood donating, Lindsay Ellis ContraPoints, H Bomber Guy supporting feminist with a capital F. For fuck you, you red pill fuckboy pieces of shit. Yeah! I love this stuff. And Bad Cop is one of those bands that just reinforces all the stuff I love about punk, the attitude, the intensity, the aggression, the bravado, just... This is one of those punk bands that checks just about every box in my book. Yeah, this is one of those albums you'll probably be seeing on my best of the year list, and yeah, I'm gonna say go right the fuck out and get Warriors. This is something you legit need to be spinning if you haven't already. Then I realized the elephant in the room. Quite literal elephant, I suppose. This band's got a great big ol' left-wing political stance that, hey, maybe some people ain't too peachy keen to get on. I mean, yeah, if you aren't into what this album's saying, it's definitely preachy, I guess. But yeah, I'll full-blown admit to that. Hell, part of the reason I like this album so much is because its political message is something that vibes with my queer, feminist, cucklord, mean ol' SJW. What's coming to take away your video games and porno titties ass? You know, it fits me, but... Look, this is an all-girl punk band signed to Fat Records with a flaming Lady Justice on the cover and a lead single literally titled Womanarchist. I mean, look, if you don't know exactly what you're walking into after all those clear and visible posted signs, then you're Mr. Magoo. I don't know what else to tell you. And B, look, fuck off. Reviews are subjective, and this is a show specifically about my opinion on these things. And guess the fuck what? Every single review you've ever read, heard, or seen has some sort of bias leaning in any number of different directions. Whether it's spoken, unspoken, text, or subtext, reviews are subjective by nature. And frankly, I'm not good at, nor do I have the desire to play delicate little tippy toes around the more controversial aspects of the band. Leave politics out of it. Look, if they got a message, I'ma talk about that message. People say to pipe down about politics in my reviews sometimes, but when it's a key selling point to the band or the album itself, fuck off, that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm not gonna bullshit just because it might hurt your delicate little fifis. You need a safe space, bro? Look, if you're into some growly ass girl punk, then this is the album to pick up this year. We've gotten some nice stuff here and there, but this is one of the better full force punk albums to be released in 2017. And yup, I want to see more people listening to it, so yeah, thumbs way the fuck up. And if you got a problem with that, I got another finger I could gladly raise for you, okay? Warriors gets 5 donations to Planned Parenthood out of 5. Holy shit, I get 2 kick-ass Riot Girl bands to review in one episode?
What god did I please?
Thank you, patrons! Oh, sometimes I think you guys know my taste better than I do. Holy shit. Dollskin's a bit of a different vibe, though. Whereas Bad Cop is a punk-ass punk band, Dollskin's focus is a bit broader than that. There's definitely tinges of punk in there, on stuff like Roadkilla and Punch-a-Nazi. Oh god, do I really love Punch-a-Nazi. To those of you that thought Goodnight Alt-Right was a little... may I offer this as a possible alternative. This song kicks ass. But no, overall, this band's approach is much more alt-rocky. They have more of a mainstream kind of feel to them. This legit feels like the kind of rock you might happen to stumble across on the radio from time to time. Bad Cop? Look, unless your radio station just fucking rules, you're probably never gonna hear that shit on the radio anytime soon. It feels like it could reach a broader audience. They touch on a lot of other different musical styles and try to cover a wider gamut of sounds than just, you know, rah-rah. Like on stuff like Sunflower or Sweet Pea, they aren't afraid to just take a crack at writing songs about relationships, or in the latter's place, just basically a full-tilt, lovey-dovey, miss ya baby kind of song, and they do it pretty well, and they aren't afraid to try and be a little experimental here and there. The album closes with Uninvited, a song that starts slow but has some nice build-up, some powerful synth work, and by the end it's just a blistering shred fest. Hell yeah, this is an album that opens strong and closes strong, and there's not too many weak points in between either. Alex Snowden has some goddamn respectable chops as a lead guitarist, and Sidney Dolezal has some very nice pipes too. This is a band I think a lot of people will be able to get into. In fact, probably even more so than something like Bad Cop. But that's also, like, kind kind of the only one problem I have with it. While it is more palatable, more mainstream, more something a general audience is gonna appreciate, by effect, that also makes it slightly less interesting, to me at least. I mean, don't get me wrong, this album certainly does kick ass in several places. Like I mentioned, Punch a Nazi wrecks my shit, but I kinda wish there were more moments like that on this thing. And there are times on this album, like Boy Band or Baby's Breath, where this group just gets a little poppier than I tend to like on albums of this stripe. Even then, it still isn't like bad or anything, it's just more of a Pink rebellious as opposed to a Le Tigre rebellious, you know what I mean? But hey, this thing is still pretty banging, and I enjoyed my time with it. For those of you looking for a full snot fest, I'm more inclined to recommend the previous album to you, but for those of you that are a bit more, let's say, Foo Fighters than Rancid, yeah, this is something that I think will feel better to you. And, you know, I'm glad stuff like this exists. Even if it's not something I go to every single day, straight ahead rock that's this bratty and badass is sorely needed in the music scene right now, and I'm happy to give my blessing to the good bands that want to step up and do it. Manic Pixie Dream Girl gets 4 Zoe Deschanel's out of 5. The White Buffalo. Wow, this is about as close to out of my jurisdiction as I think you can get on this show, people. Not only could you barely consider this thing rock, but if anything, this album is way closer to being country. And I
fucking goddamn hate country.
Like, people, I'm not gonna mince words with you. I detest this genre. I loathe this genre. If you took a thesaurus and used every similar word to despise to describe the genre, it wouldn't be enough words to describe how much I hate country. Imagine Am's speech from the beginning of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, and back it with a stupid fucking hillbilly slide guitar and... Yeah, that's how much I hate this genre. But, I need to clarify that statement. I don't hate, like, all country. I don't hate the classic stuff. Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, Willie Nelson, John Denver. You know, that country? No, that country is great. That's beautiful. No, that stuff is A-okay in my book, alright? Modern country, on the other hand... this shit with a rusty shovel. What the hell even is this noise? This isn't country. They're just doing hip-hop for people who are afraid of black people. Those words aren't mine, by the way. They're Steve Earle's. But I don't know, dude. I hear shit like Florida Georgia Line, Luke Bryan, or any number of these other generic doofuses in trucker hats, and I just feel like I'm listening to the most obnoxious pop song ever written that just so happens to have an episode of Horse Apples playing in the background. Just, oh, fuck that. But I've been told there is a better place. Places that I'm sure guys like Spectrum Pulse could probably help guide me through.
You know, it's your loss, dude. If you don't stick around, you're not going to find the good stuff here. And considering what's going on in Southern Rock in 2017, some of the country punk side, that's before we can get into the more alternative country-leaning side, I bet we could find stuff that would be right up your alley.
Where guys like Sturgill Simpson and Ryan Horn actually write compelling melodies and thoughtful lyrics. And hell, there's even a good deal of punk artists out there who moonlight on the side as really fantastic country performers. I mean, if anybody's gonna sell my stubborn ass on country, it's gonna be guys like Chuck Reagan and Greg Graffin, so, you know, I'm not completely tuned off to country, but man, you've really got to impress if you're gonna bring a country album to my door. And the White Buffalo appears to be an artist that is clearly on the good side of the country fence, so, we can review this album without going Super Saiyan, thank Christ. No, what I like about White Buffalo is this man knows his way around a chorus. I don't care how much you detest country, it's damn hard to listen to a song like Avalon and just not feel completely elevated from it. It's practically a Springsteen rocker, and on stuff like Madam Soft, Madam Sweet, and Night Stalker Blues, he straight up channels the Delta with those lead guitar licks and all that harmonica fuckery. The Heart and Soul of the Night is a good old-fashioned 70s chill rock track that feels like it was ripped straight out of Phil Lynot's songbook, and when this guy takes the time to slow things down, god damn, that's when he really shoots for the heart. I mean, any country artist worth their salt knows how to write a good slow jam, and on songs like If I Lost My Eyes and I Am the Moon, Buffalo shows us that he's not only great at giving us a pleasant, sorrowful melody, seriously, the string work on the latter song is just so goddamn blissful, but that he's also not too shabby with a metaphor either. Country just doesn't seem to have enough good lyricists these days. I may not be the right guy to make this kind of call, but this album, at least from my perspective, feels like a rockers kind of country album. This was a good call to shoot to me, actually. I really was feeling it. This is legit. This is very legit. I might even have a place for this somewhere on my album of the year list, legit. If something this country can win a guy like me over, man, it's gotta be doing something right. Darkest Dark, Lightest Lights gets 4.5 bridges built out of 5. Oh man, Primus. People have been asking me to cover this band for a really long time, and honestly, I've been meaning to get around to it. It's just, you don't want to know my particular feelings on this thing, but Primus. As an avid player of the 4-string, yeah, you better believe I got love for their work. Les Claypool is a goddamn musical genius, and I got a lot of respect for the guy's work. Claypool is a god king of the experimental genre. In my eyes, yeah, he totally belongs right up there with Zappa, Captain Beefheart, and King Crimson. Dude's a living legend. And as goofy as Primus always was, they always were goofy in a charming, unique way that even if you were scratching your head to what you were listening to, it still left you with a smile on your face. Except for that one time. Look, Willy Wonka is one of my favorite goddamn movies ever, and there's literally no goddamn reason for you to do this. Why would you do this, Les? Why the fuck would you do this? Fucking why the fuck would you fucking do this, Les? I mean, look, despite what I felt about the last one, I remembered spinning Green Naugahyde back when that came out a few years back, and, you know, I dug what they were doing. I was glad to see them back. I figured now that Primus was doing a, for lack of a better word, more traditional album of theirs, that they would be getting themselves back on track and doing just fine, right? Well, oh boy, this album. This is a conflicting one. See, Primus is working with another premise here. Thankfully, one that doesn't molest my childhood. Okay, I'm over it. I promise, I'm over it. But this premise here is actually based around a children's book that Claypool used to read to his kids. Not the worst thing in the world, I guess. It's something I could totally see Primus doing well. And the book itself? Yeah, this totally seems like the thing Les Claypool would read to his kids. But man, this album, it's just got nothing going on. The book itself doesn't really have much of a story, a plot, or even much in the line of characters or morals to work with per se. It's just kind of a bunch of stuff that happens. Well, okay, on paper that's great, right? That leaves Les and the gang more elbow room to do what they want with the general concept. Take the story in whatever places they want to and, you know, do trippy new things with it. But they don't. I mean, the playing here is generally okay. Les is slapping the sweet, loving bejesus out of his bass, as is standard protocol, but man, Les's playing is really the only string of this album's bow. There are long moments on this record, like in The Scheme and The Storm, where Claypool's thumping about is literally the only thing that's going on in the track, for like minutes at a time. Granted, yes, he is absolutely annihilating it, but as much as we often forget it, Primus is more than just Claypool. Larry Lalonde and Tim Alexander just aren't doing much on this damn thing. Take The Dream, for example. A 6.5-minute track where Lalonde spends the first 5 minutes just dicking around with some sitar effects, and like Tim barely shows up right at the very end of the song to just wrap things up, and that's kind of all there is to it. Or a song like The Trek, where Claypool basically plays 2 notes over and over, and the band is just atmosphering in the background and just chiming in on occasion. Look, Larry, Tim, I know you tend to get a bit overshadowed in this group. I'll bet that probably sucks, but for the love of pork soda, do something! This album was a sparse, sedated, hollow feeling experience. It's not like it wasn't well played generally, but it's just the album's core idea is just a very, very weak one. Who in the bloody twisted fuck was asking for Primus to go atmospheric? The premise and concept are shallow and flimsy, the instrumentation is empty and bland, and while this album may not be quite as infuriating of a failure as their last one, it's also a way, way, way less interesting one. This album is boring. It's super concentrated boring. It's impressively boring. And boring is a word that should be at least 7 sentences away from Primus at all times. I mean, hell, give it up to the Wonka album. At least that was an interesting failure. This album feels like a Primus album if it had been bled dry of all its creativity, its vibrancy, its, ironically enough, color. Okay, maybe that's what they were going for in like a meta sense or whatever, but it doesn't make the goddamn thing fun to listen to. For Primus to be this boring, this bland, to be this whatever feeling, it feels almost treasonous. Primus is the place you specifically go to when you want the exact opposite of bland. You go to Primus when you want to see colors you didn't even know your mind's eye was capable of seeing. Primus without its color barely fucking exists. These guys need to stay the fuck away from concepts. Or at the very least, move out of the children's section of the library. Come on, for fuck's sake. The Desaturating 7 gets 2 black and white rainbows out of 5. What is this? No, seriously, this is an album for me to review. This is a band I talk about on a bad album covers episode. Look at it, this looks like a Carpenter's cover band. This isn't my territory, surely. God damn it, they picked the worst possible name in existence. They are impossible to Google. Between Sum 41 and other bands like The Sum of Our Scars, a band spelled Sum but pronounced Sum, and 1,000 different articles on mathematics, it was hard enough just to even find a Bandcamp page for these guys. And they don't have like any YouTube footage I can use for background either, so the band you're seeing and hearing in the background right now is actually a band called Era and the Ferns, an absolutely kick-ass little group. Like seriously, they are amazing, they're wonderful, they're one of the best bands you probably haven't heard of. Like, check them out when you get the chance. Evan is a Vegan is the best fucking album you've never heard, neither here nor there. I'm not talking about them, am I? I'm sorry. Getting back to these guys, oh, look at them. This is the hipsteriest thing I think I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know, this isn't a band, it's a bunch of community college kids goofing about between their shifts at Barnes & Noble. I can't review this. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not being fair. I'm not being fair at all. This is obviously a tiny, humble folk project, and their scope is small. Really small. Apparently, this band was formed accidentally when the two guys were just trying to write the soundtrack to a small independent film they were creating. Seriously? That's literally how this band came into existence. Really? That can't be true. That's ripped out of a Noah Baumbach script, right? Come on. Well, the film fell apart, but the band apparently stuck together. So, okay, let's do an experiment. Look at this album cover for like 5 to 10 seconds, okay? Just stare at it. Study it for a good bit. Okay, got it? Now close your eyes and just imagine what the music on this album probably sounds like. Have you got something, kind of playing in your head? Okay, that's pretty much what this album sounds like. Man, here I am complaining that Primus's album was minimalistic. This album is literally just an acoustic guitar, a drum set that they use for like 2 songs, and think I heard an egg shaker in there somewhere. Like, there is not a lot going on here. The two guys, God bless them, they're doing their thing, but they don't sing terribly well, even by folk standards. And the guitar work is, you know, just basic-ass chords most of the time. And I swear to God, that guitar is straight up out of tune on most tracks. And everything about this just has the most lo-fi aesthetics you could possibly imagine. Like, this album may look like it comes out of 1966, but trust me, it sounds like it comes out of 1966 too. To give you an idea of how lo-fi we're talking, remember my own Patreon EP I made a while back using nothing but a snowball mic, Final Cut, and my own acoustic guitar, just for like shits and giggles mostly? Yeah, my album has better production than this. Ooh, that's saying something, isn't it? It's lo-fi, and man, it's also really derpy. I mean, the stuff on this album can get downright derp-tastic. It really does sound like it's something ripped straight out of a mumblecore movie. They even have a song called Art School Kids, where they literally take on a herp-de-derp affectation of their voices as a joke. I'm sorry, I'm being trolled, right? This has to be a troll. And after doing a bit more research on this band, I realized, oh shit, I kind of am. Through my research, I found out that the tall dude is actually just a guy who plays football for Aurora University. And the other guy is just a local filmmaker from around the Plainfield area, and the girl is his wife, apparently. Oh shit, I'm not reviewing a band, not a proper band with like a manager, a touring schedule, or at the very least a van they can all sleep in. This isn't a band, not like the stuff I usually review, is it? This is just like a side project this group of friends comes together and does in their spare time. Oh, come on, that's not fair. I can't review that. Not on the same level as most of the bands I would usually talk about. Come on, I just got done talking about Primus. I can't review them on the same level as that. That's not fair at all. You know, in fact, I'm gonna make a special exception here. I'm not giving this album a score. No. Instead, I'll let you guys decide for yourselves. I think this band deserves at least that much. I'll leave a link to their Bandcamp in the video description, and both of their albums are on Spotify if you want to check them out that way. I know my general impressions here wasn't exactly wine and roses, but hey, I know this will appeal to some of you. Hey, it's not the worst thing I've ever heard in the world, not by a long shot. If you're feeling bold, give it a shot. I'm sure they wouldn't mind the extra traffic. And you know, it sounds like these guys have fun doing their own thing, and you know, there ain't a goddamn thing wrong with that. It's hard being an outfit this small, especially in the middle of the Midwest. I know that from personal experience, believe me. So, hey, this wasn't exactly my thing, but if it sounds like it might be up your alley, give it a whirl. And hey, if you spin it and you don't like it, Aaron the Ferns is still out there. Seriously, oh my god, if nothing else, go check them out immediately. Evan is a Vegan is a classic. How about for the next review, we just do a complete 180 and get the exact opposite of this? Yep, that'll do the trick. Oh, fuck, this band kicks ass. You want technical ass death metal? These are the guys you go to. You want riffs as thick as concrete, beats to blast with the force of a shot-off shotgun? These are your Huckleberries. Dying Fetus is just a good example of metal-ass metal. It's grimy, it's gritty, it's gory. I'll be goddamned if it isn't played and performed to an absolute G. I mean T. And yeah, Wrong One to Fuck With is pretty much a standard walk in the park for these guys. It's everything you've come to expect from Dying Fetus. The riffage and crazy proficient instrumentation here is just a sight to behold, you know? Especially given the fact that these guys have been a trio for the past handful of years. The stuff they're writing and pulling off here just becomes more impressive when you take that into consideration too. Dying Fetus is a band that just never lets up the assault. You step into the chamber and for a straight hour you're just slathered in gore. It's fucking great. But I run into a problem with Dying Fetus. a problem I've talked about many times, and if you're a longtime watcher of my show, you probably know exactly what I'm going to start talking about here. But for those of you who are uninitiated, let me break it down for you. Dying Fetus, as terrific as they are, is one of those bands that suffers from the problem. Yeah. Look, I like a lot of what Fetus does, and this album was a fun ride too. But it's not much different from a lot of their other stuff. It's good, but it doesn't mix up the formula too much or try too many new things. It's just kinda another Dying Fetus album. And diametrically, your enjoyment of this album probably won't sway or bend too much from whatever your opinion of their last album was, or the one before that, or the one before that. Dying Fetus is also one of those metal bands that I would say you gotta have at least some metal experience before diving straight into. I mean, if you're the kind of person who the only metal you've really listened to is like Metallica and Avenged Sevenfold, jumping headlong straight into this might fuck you up pretty wicked. Dying Fetus is very, very tech-deathy. There's a lot about that genre that metalheads and people who know what to look for in music this complicated will definitely be able to appreciate, but your average pop charts homeboy is probably gonna listen to this and just hear a bunch of look, gorgeous instrumentation or no, guttural vocals this goddamn punishing do take some getting used to. If you're looking into getting into death metal and want to hear some kick-ass technical stuff, hell yeah, I can recommend this album. I can recommend a lot of Dying Fetus's catalog, actually. If the heaviest thing you've listened to this year is Neck Deep, on the other hand, I won't stop ya, but don't come crying to me when this thing runs your brain through a goddamn wood chipper. For those of you more in the know, does it do anything too different? Does it stray from the path in any new or interesting ways? Nah, not really, but it's Dying Fetus. Was anyone asking them to? They've hit their mark again, like they always do. Nothing wrong with that. Proto Martyr. This is one of those bands that once you press play, you'll probably be able to tell whether this is going to be your jam or not within the first 30 seconds of hearing it. You're either going to hear a bold new movement in artistic post-punk, or some pretentious artsy-fartsy hoity-toity bullshit. Proto Martyr, more like punching fodder. Get over here, you torpy little shits. Fuck you. Like, this is an art rock group with a capital Art. See, Proto Martyr is another one of those bands that's kind of like nothing more in a weird way, in that they think they're really, really, really intelligent. But in this case, you know, they actually have the cortex meat to help back those assumptions up. It's way more legit here. Unlike the bumper sticker platitudes of the former, these guys really are writing pretty deep, complex, and intricate ruminations on thought-provoking subjects, and you know, not just belching out the stuff you find on quote-a-day calendars. Singer Joe Casey draws from a lot of strange and unusual sources when crafting lyrics. A lot of personal experiences in there, for sure, but there's also lots of obscure literary references, subtle nods to old country tunes, true-to-life documented supernatural phenomena, and lines ripped straight out of the pages of long-dead British essayists. Like, pawing through this lyric sheet practically feels like your first year in graduate school. But Casey draws from all these sources to create a mind-warping and genuinely surreal feeling overarching meta-narrative. This isn't a concept album, but there are very strongly alluded to themes of miscommunication, misunderstanding, alienation, and helplessness. It's an album about how the human race is driving itself apart and disintegrating into itself and its own self-interests. This is one of those records that is cerebral, like crazy cerebral, and it's all poured out to you through Joe Casey's delicious baritone vocals. And when I mean poured, I mean almost literally. The dude's vocal rhythm and flow is odd. He's a bit of a rambler. His delivery reminds me a lot of Lou Reed's or Nick Cave's. God, I've had to bring him up a lot this year. That's a weird coincidence, isn't it? He's not so much singing at you as he is reciting his lyrics like they were dynamic poetry. There's a certain free verse vibe to it. Which again, to some of you, I know, this sounds like the most pretentious, fucking up its own ass, fucking gobbledygook bullshit, but believe me, I rather enjoyed this album. It did not put me off. Like I mentioned, for as rambling and as obtuse as Joe likes to get, I really do feel a genuine conviction behind his lyrics. And while he likes to take the circuitous route to his destinations, he does always get there in the end and deliver a pertinent message, like on Here's the Things, fuming on we and American capitalism, or on My Children's headlong dive into the fright of what the future holds and what legacy you will leave on it, and particularly on Male Plague, which is literally just a great big ol' fuck you to toxic masculinity. You know, it takes a really good art band to make a message as simple as "fuck you, you misogynist douchebag," and make it sound deep and thought-provoking. Another reason I dig it is, of course, the actual music. This is post-punk that's kind of two worlds. It has one foot planted firmly in the shoegazy side of the genre, but the other foot of this band is firmly planted on the rockier, heavier side of the genre. Guitars are nicely distorted, and they love to play around with riffage and crunch, and Alex Leonard's drums, oh man, they provide this album with the majority of its thunder and its bombastness. In a lot of ways, this band almost reminds me of The National, another stellar post-punky-ish group that toys around a lot with narrative concepts in their lyrics, bathes itself in melancholia, but holds the structure of its sound up with deceptively intense and punch-tastic instrumentation. Like this band, imagine if The National were a bit less Joy Division and a bit more Hunter S. Thompson, and you'll kind of get their general vibe. Again, given their style, given the type of band they are, and given all the $20 pitchfork media words I've had to use to describe this album, this review in and of itself may have straight up turned off some of you, but man, if it didn't, I would urge you to give this a try if you haven't already. It's got an interesting and unique approach to vocals and lyrics, resting on a terrifically solid sonic foundation that makes for a goddamn wonderful head trip of an experience. It's not something I'd spin every day, but only for the same reason I wouldn't drink absinthe every day. It's an album with a lot to unpack, but if you take the time to unpack it, there is a very nice prize waiting for you at the bottom. Relatives in Descent gets 4.5 obscure literary references out of 5. Wait, Mastodon? Like, again? What the fuck are you guys doing here? You already released an album this year, an absolutely killer album at that. You guys more or less secured a comfy spot on my best of the year list already. Are you cheeky pricks trying to double dip? Don't fucking do that to me, guys. I'm bad enough at keeping up with the dudes who release one thing a year, let alone dozens. Nah, what we have here is another EP. An EP of 4 songs which were originally recorded between the Once More Round the Sun sessions, with one straggler from the Emperor of Sand sessions. So, again, B-sidey stuff that didn't make the final cut, stuff that was left off of the album. 9 times out of 10, I would probably tell a requester to pick something different, because more often than not in this scenario, you're shortchanging yourself. Why on earth would I want to review the bits of an album that weren't good enough to be on the album? Or at least that was kind of my opinion walking into this thing, though by the end of it, it made perfect sense why these songs weren't put on their respective albums. They're too soft? Don't take that the wrong way. These songs still contain the unbelievably skillful riffing and solo work, the crazy frenetic drums, the thunderous, ever-growling bass work, those distinctive Brent Hines vocals. Man, this collection of tracks is weird because they're the closest things to ballads I think we could ever possibly hear from Mastodon. I mean, of course there wasn't room for this stuff on their last 2 albums. Where in the jolly Roger fuck would you have stuck a slow jam on either of those? But again, don't misread me. These aren't fucking monster ballads or anything. They're just way moodier, way more atmospheric, way more ethereal than I think your average Mastodon fan would be expecting. The instrumentation is still ridiculously well arranged and sharply played, but the usual psychedelic nature of Mastodon's sound translates surprisingly well to a more melancholy setting, believe it or not. These songs take on a darker mood, a more somber kind of tone, and apparently most of these songs were written around a nasty breakup Brent had gone through, so... Holy shit, this is the closest thing to a goth album Mastodon could probably produce. That's weird, isn't it? Man, you can never say these guys don't know how to mix things up, can ya? Again, I don't have a ton to say, necessarily, because this is a super short album. 4 tracks, 21 minutes. And if you're not already into Masty, I wouldn't tell you to start out here. Again, if only because nothing they've ever done has sounded quite like this. This album is way too chill to be a Mastodon record, really, but... You know... I understand why it wouldn't end up in a full Mastodon. I don't know if I would want a full-length album of this, but as a nice little side dish, a nice little aperitif to kind of hold us over until their next big outing, yeah, I certainly won't complain. Hey, this may be different, but more Mastodon is rarely, if ever, a bad thing. Cold Dark Places gets 4.5 goth phases out of 5. And we are finally done with the Patreon Blitz videos. Yes! Oh, special thanks to Spectrum Pulse for appearing in this episode, and special thanks to all of you for giving to the show to help make these vids possible. 2 more Patreon requests are coming up next week, and then a catch-up quickie should follow after that, and then GDR3. Sit tight, people.